Hello, 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 party people. How's it going? Welcome to a new episode. I'm Jack, also known as the Hood Sommelier, and today the show is a little earlier than normal, but I want you to be sure that the guest is worth it. Is worth us starting early. We are traveling to Colorado. We are going to discover a distillery that some of y'all probably already had a chance to actually try their product, but you may have some questions. Just like me, I've tried this whiskey multiple times, but had some questions about okay, what's the process? Who are the people behind the whiskey? And today we are lucky enough to have Miss Mel Maddox from Old Elk Distillery. And she is here to let us know more about the whiskey, about the process, about the distillery. So if you're here, do me a favor, make sure you just click, share into your favorite whiskey group, share into your favorite place to actually talk about whiskey so we can get more people on, so we can chat. If you're on YouTube, same thing. If you're on Twitter, same thing. All right, thank you. Thanks for joining. And let's welcome Mel. Mel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jack. I'm pretty honored to be here.
No, no honor. Just happy to have you here. Uh, the folks, if probably is sorry, it's about 3 o'clock. So most folks are trying to pack their stuff and get out of the office now. So um, we'll make sure that we get everyone can watch this later.
hmm
What's up? What's up? People on YouTube already jumping in. And if you hear, just make sure you share this with your friend. And if they're like me on a Monday, ready to actually have some bourbon, sure, why not? So, thank you for joining. Mel, tell the people who you are and what you do for Old Elk.
Sure. So I'm Melinda Maddox. I go by Mel, head of production here at Old Elk Distillery. We're in Fort Collins, Colorado, and we've been operating and distributing for about coming on 6 years now. We've been producing whiskey for almost 10 at this point. Um, we played the long game, a lot of patience. I joined the team about 5 years ago as a beverage director and on-premise kind of consultant for working with our national brands. And then COVID hit, and lucky for me, this company is great to work for, and they wanted to keep everybody that they could. And really, that was over 90% of our workforce, even our tasting room employees. And so they did a great job of giving people opportunity, and I was one of them. So there's a chance to move into the distillery operations about 3 years ago, and that's when I took over the head of production and have been working with them ever since on our blends and our barrels and our single barrel program and bottling and just kind of everything that has to do with the liquid. I'm lucky to get to work with.
No, absolutely. So you joined 5 years ago.
hmm
You did sales, pretty much, right? Making sure sales are right. And now, what do you do exactly for them? What do you bring in um, as far as your edge?
Sure.
But
Well, palate. The biggest thing I bring to the table is quality control and sensory analysis in my palate. So I had about 20 plus years in the beverage industry and the hospitality industry. And during that time, I really honed in on like what people want when they're tasting great food or great liquid and what they want out of a hospitality experience as well too. So we really treat our whiskey not just the liquid, but we really are listening to our customers, and um, we try to make the experience for them when they come to visit us here. It's very much home.
Mhm.
That's why I'm in the barrel room today. So this is part of our rick house here. We've got about 3,000 barrels here in Fort Collins and about another 19,000 off site. So part of my job day to day is managing that inventory, making sure that it's accounted for, that I know, what lots we have, what production lots we have on hand, what the age of the barrels is, helping to plan out our future production plans. Really everything from dumping the barrel, IDing the barrel, locating the barrel, to mixing the liquid in the barrel, to helping with bottling, to proofing down our whiskey for our core products. So again, it's like managing the liquid, but there's so much more that goes into it besides just the bottle, the end result that people see. So we really spent the last couple of years. What I brought to the table is organization. The strong suit for me. I love operations, and I really enjoy seeing how we can utilize what we have to really maximize the flavor. So I'm excited to share the cigar cut later with y'all for that reason.
No, absolutely. So, where did you have your hands into the latest release, the cigar cut?
I do. I
All
do. I
right.
do.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll get a chance. We'll get a chance to try it. But as I'm asking about the distillery, tell us a little bit about the history. Like,
Sure.
uh, do you guys have a distillery operation? Do you source your product? Just for the novice, I know, but someone may see the bottle on the shelf and go, "I wonder if it's sourced or is it real
Yeah. Why drink
Colorado whiskey or what is it?" Right. So while I'm asking the question, we're gonna start with your lowest proof one, which is your blended straight whiskey. Um, I want to know. Yeah, tell me about the story of the distillery. Why
that?
Old Elk? How did he come about?
Yeah. So we're owned by a family. They're the Richardson family. They are entrepreneurs. They started many, many businesses over the years. One that they're well known for is Otterbox. And so they're into,
Otterbox as
different,
the phone cover.
yeah,
Otterbox.
like the phone cover. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, Coolers, things like that. So it's one of the, I'll probably diverge a little bit, but like it's one of the reasons why we have cool things like these toppers, because
Yes.
we have the technology to create really cool, pourers and toppers, and we care about the product looking good too. It's a
Mhm.
premium spirit for sure. We started back in 2013 is when we established. The family went to MGP at the time, so Midwest Grain Producers, and started having conversations with them about contracting. So love that you asked that, because sourcing and contracting, it's confusing for a lot of people.
Correct.
And I know, like for me, when I got into the business, in the whiskey business specifically, about 10 years ago, at the time, like MGP was kind of a bad word. So
Correct. Correct.
um, it's neat to be a part of the conversation that's helped to change that perception,
Mhm.
and to help shed some light on that. So, we went to them and we said, hey, we'd like to, make our own recipe. So that kind of sets us out separate from sourcing. Sourcing would be if we just went and said, we want to buy your whiskey. We don't necessarily want to create our own mash bill or do anything specific to the whiskey other than purchase it from you and then we'll bottle
Right.
it. So we said we want to create our own custom mash bill, which is the one that you're drinking right now. So the blended straight bourbon, our 88 proof whiskey with the red label,
Mm-hmm.
that was a custom mash
On the
bill.
market.
Yeah.
Right.
So we went to them. That has a high barley content. So what we wanted to do is really separate out the flavor, the smoothness of the whiskey, and then also create as premium a product as we could. And so Greg Metz was the master distiller at the time at MGP, and he was really excited to get to create something and kind of have no holds barred on it. We
Correct.
essentially were open with him and just said, like, make great whiskey. We'll worry about the rest of it later. And so he made that whiskey for us. It's a 51% corn, so minimum corn, in order to be called a bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
And then 34% barley, which is about, anywhere from 4 to 14% more than you see in a typical
Correct.
whiskey bourbon, unless you're talking about Scotch. Um, and then 15% rye. So he kind of like backtracked, as he says. So he started with a minimum for the corn, and then he knew he needed at least 15% rye in order to maximize the spice. So
Mm-hmm.
you get like a really nice spice finish on there. And then the 34% barley brought in this like nice, level, smooth, the oak and the vanilla. And I'm not sure what you're probably sipping on right now is anywhere between 5 and 7 years old. So the bourbon that we're currently harvesting and blending for our core is in that age range, and it shows, I think, in the flavor for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, for a 5 year whiskey, it's pretty solid. This
Mhm.
one is at 44, so 44%. ABV, 88% alcohol. So it's pretty straightforward. Nothing crazy.
I
It's
call it my everyday. Like if
it's
you're,
definitely an everyday sipper. I like
yeah,
the sweet notes on there. That that nose give you some nice maltiness and a little spice finish at the edge is as solid of beginner beginner bourbon as you can have.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I mean, it can also be a special occasion bottle for those who are just getting into whiskey because, it's like $50 on the shelf, sometimes a little bit more. And
49.99.
yeah, not everybody wants to spend $50 on a bottle, but you are going to get a product that if you're trying to impress some friends, you're probably going to impress them because they might either be aware of Old Elk as a brand, because we do have a lot of, at this point, we've got a single barrel program that's really taken off with
Right.
bourbon aficionados and I can't say the word, but you know what I mean, experts and
Right.
collectors. And then our different master series and our different blends have really gotten people excited. So,
Right.
again, that like the blended straight is a great, just like tells people like you're serious about drinking whiskey, but also like you don't have to drink 120 proof.
Yeah, and also he's a mid range, right? The
Mhm.
44, average industry standard is about 45. So you guys want to be the different kids. You're 44, and 88 proof. For me, with 49.99 middle range there. For me is I won't even call that premium yet. I think it's the average standard of the industry now, where you
Sure.
can find a good bourbon. 5 years old. I've seen bourbon younger than that that's sold at that price. So I would say 5 years old. Nice blend. I love the blend on it. That's how I walked into Old Elk is through your regular. I'm like, oh, this is solid. This is
Mhm.
is it's a solid whiskey. So you cannot go wrong with solid. And like I say, if you guys are here, if you're on Facebook or anywhere else, make sure you like, share with your friends. Let's show Old Elk some love. If you have had Old Elk before, I'll put an F in the chat so we know that you've tried it before. So as we go through this expression, there may be some that you may not have had before. Because, for example, I didn't realize that Old Elk had rye.
Mhm.
All the Old Elk I have are all bourbon. So it was one of those things where I'm like, oh, you guys have a rye. I didn't know that. So tell us a little bit
Sure.
about that expression.
Well, the rye is a great one to bring up because MGP is known for its 95.5 rye. That is Greg Metz's kind of legacy as far as
Signature
signature.
legacy.
So we didn't deviate from that. Greg, you're doing a great job with the 95.5. Let's not change it up. We don't need to make a signature custom mash bill for ourselves with that. The rye also uh, probably, originally we just thought we were going to do the bourbon. That's where our heart was, and uh, really quickly learned that you need to kind of diversify when it comes to spirits, and if you can build your brand out with great qualities.
Hmm.
Um, One of the reasons we've also chosen to stick with Greg's rye is, he left MGP in
Correct.
2016 to actually join Old Elk as our master distiller. So, um,
So that was my question: is did he go from there straight to you guys, or was it a more of a like, you know what, I kind of like y'all, but I'm not sure. Let me think about it. And you're like, oh, we can write a check, and they're like, oh, come over.
I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly. I mean, I think there was definitely like a courtship happening for sure. I think it was a little bit like a relationship that, um, Old Elk wanted to build with Greg, and he was happy to come along. And he'll talk about some of those early days too. Is we're still a relatively small team, so everything that you would see a brand with the production size that we have is typically a lot bigger, and you would have lots of people working in marketing, lots of people working in branding, lots of
Right.
people working in sales, lots of people
Correct.
working in distilling and production. And like, because we're small, Greg gets to he gets to help insight on marketing, as do I. He gets to help with the brand development. So it was something that he got to be a part of from literally the ground up, pretty much when it came to building out Old Elk as a brand and a distillery and a world class whiskey. So one of the things that he brought along and that we developed in the early days is our slow cut process. So while the juice that you're drinking right now, the rye, was made and barreled at MGP, once it comes here, it gets our treatment. And so our treatment When we take it out of the barrel and we're proofing down and adding water to it, we do something called a slow cut process. So essentially, it's an exothermic reaction that we're trying to negate or decrease the effects. So when you add water to a high proof spirit, you can actually see it kind of warm up in the glass. If you do this with like 120 proof or any whiskey that's really barrel strength, and then add water to it in a large amount, you'll actually see like condensation happen in your glass and
Mm,
feel it warm up. And that's that exothermic reaction. And what's happening there is that essentially the water and then your whiskey, it's volatile, everything, it's
mhm.
alive, right? Like whiskey's alive. And so when you add that other component to it, the atoms are all trying to work together. The molecules are all trying to work together and integrate. And if you do that too fast, that's when you get that heating up. And so I think about it as like boiling a pot of water, or even just, here in Colorado, we lose a lot to evaporation. And so we want to try to keep as much flavor in our whiskey as possible. We spent all this time creating a gorgeous product to go into a barrel, and then to take it out and just dump the water in and probably lose some of that flavor. We don't want to do. So that was one of the things that, I think is important to have people know, because it does set us apart in our proofing process. It's not to say that other people don't do a slower process, but for us, we know we're doing at least 4 to 5 times slower. We've also, in the past couple of years, I developed a longer resting period. So kind of, I don't know if you've noticed this sometimes, but like a bottle needs to open up when
Yep.
you first
Yep.
open up and pour it out. And it's like it gets better over time as the air is
Correct.
interacting, right? So the longer we can let our whiskey rest before bottling, the better, because it gets that time to interact and let all those flavors kind of come alive.
This rye is solid.
Yeah. I mean,
This rye is solid. Is what I would expect from a good rye, and
yes.
it's good rye. 50% ABV, 95.5 rye, about 79.99 on the market. I like it. Nose is straight to the point, nice malt, those nice lavender note that I look forward in a rye.
Yeah. Do you find, Jack, that people tell you that they don't like rye? Like as a
Hmm.
general? Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
We've found that too.
As a matter of fact, I'm a rye hater. I'm a 100% rye hater. So for that reason, it's hard to convince me of a good rye.
Hmm.
So when I tell you a rye is good, guarantee that rye is good, because he come from a place of I hate rye, I don't like it, I don't want it. So if I actually taste it and I like it, that means you probably should consider it. So that's one of my things is um I, I I didn't know your recipe of the rye. Obviously, I did some googling and found what the rye was, and I'm like, okay, you don't find a lot of 95.5, 5 to 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
50% usually is usually sold at a higher, a higher proof, and also at a higher premium. But 95.5 rye, original MGP 95.5, beautifully set at 50 proof, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. That is, you know, for people that are, I know people that are 95.5 fans. Like you can't tell them that's the best. That's not the best rye on the planet. So,
Yeah.
um, for all of you guys that are 95.5 rye fans, trust me, you may want to look into Old Elk. If your favorite rye is not, your 95.5 is not there, Old Elk got you. And I think this is something that a lot of people probably didn't know, just like me, that this is original MGP 95.5 rye. So this is good knowledge to have next time you're picking up a bottle to do a nice comparison.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I mean, it's as you said, it's 5 and 6 year. Sometimes we'll blend in a 7 year barrel too, just depending on the flavor profile we want to achieve, and you don't see that a lot. So I think that's part of the problem is people just there's a lot of interesting ryes out there, but they're not necessarily great because they haven't had the time in the barrel that we've given it. So I do think people sometimes ask like, well, why is your rye different? And I would say the biggest thing is that we've been very patient with it, and
Yep.
we've listened to the liquid and we've listened to Greg, and he's very much got an opinion about when barrels are ready. And for him, the sweet spot with the rye was between 5 and 6 years old, really.
which like I said, your varieties now usually sitting on a shelf.
Mhm.
So for me just to actually know now that it exists is something that I'm gonna keep my eye on, because probably that's one of those people that, you know, I feel like things that are coming out of MGP are getting younger and younger anymore. So when you find that product that is still at that, 5, 6, 7 years old there in a blend, yeah, you want to jump on that. But I always thought that you guys' signature have always been a weeded whiskey. For some reason,
Well,
that's
it's our
what I
most
always had in
popular.
mind. So tell me why I thought that.
I think probably because everybody loves a weeded product. Um,
Okay.
People love weeders. They love the flavor profile. I think that people who collect whiskey, who drink it as a social, and also, it's very one of the cool things about I think spirits in general, and when you get into like whiskey and agave based stuff, is that like you're talking about a very naturally made product, and so you can really kind of get into the nitty gritty and a little bit of the like intellectual, interesting things about like how did you make this and what goes into it, and it's really is the mash bill, the grains, the water, and then how you
And
treat
I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, Old Elk weeded is different,"
it.
right? They always say that, and so clarify, what does that mean?
So we've got two different mash bills. We have a signature mash bill, which is 51% corn and then 46% soft red winter wheat, and then 3% rye. So no barley in there. Sorry, 3% barley, no rye in there. And then we have a 45% mash bill. So 51% corn, 45% red winter wheat, and then 4% barley. I think that mash bill in and of itself, those two are very different. You see sometimes around 17, 13, even all the way up to like 30% on wheat. If you're talking about a full on wheat product, which we also have, I think that's a little more polarizing and also really hard to find. Wheat's a really difficult grain to work with. And so one of the things I think that makes ours exceptional is that Greg knew how to treat it. He knew exactly what he wanted in there. He kept a little bit of that barley to help with the actual enzyme breakdown of the grains. And again, kept it at that 51% because he was like, I'm going to go for the expensive stuff when I make our whiskey, and you guys can figure out how to make it profitable.
Correct.
And corn. I don't know like exactly what it is today, but for like comparing like corn for a bushel is like $4 versus for, wheat, it's like, double that. And then you get into barley and it's like almost 100% more. That's like $40 a bushel. So there's a lot of care taken with the ingredients before they even go into the barrel. And that's really where Greg's expertise is. And I think it shows in our products. If you like, as you're tasting through the lineup today, I feel like you can probably like have this underlying same or similarity between all of them, even though they're so different. It's
Correct.
it's like there's like the sweetness and a complexity and a spice, and I think that's like Greg's fingerprint on the distillation. And then
You can definitely tell every single
yeah,
one is
his
special on
expertise
its own.
is in the white dog. So basically, he spent all his time making sure that white spirit going into the barrel is delicious. And then
So,
now,
so the weeded was the weeded contracted as well.
mhm, yep.
So you guys contracted the weeded.
Yeah, so we
Well,
contracted the high malt bourbon. We contracted the wheated bourbon. We contracted our wheat whiskey. And then the rye was obviously, what they already had in their portfolio. Yep.
okay. So now I'm tasting this weeded, which is, not a high proof. It's actually 46%. It is so easy to drink.
Yeah.
So easy to drink. I'm gonna spin it a little bit so you can tell us a little more. The weeded, I believe the first time I've had any of your weeded was in a single barrel. and I
Hmm.
believe it was. Uh, do you guys offer that as your signature for single barrels when people are looking for single barrel? Is that the weeded that you guys are offering first?
Yes. So last year for us and the year before, um, we really kind of focused on, uh, making sure people knew that we had wheated bourbon and that they could do single barrels with it. During the pandemic, for us, a lot of virtual education, and we kept finding that like people were coming back to us that were interested in Old Elk and wanted to drink Old Elk. That what they were really excited about was the wheated, and so I think that's part of why we are known for that now. Is that it's what the groups get excited about. It's what buyers are excited to taste, and
I believe in my state, they just got to weed it
like a barrel pick.
as a single barrel with I believe it's Salted Edge, the restaurant that
Okay,
that got that, and your weeded is now 7 years old.
it is. Yes. Yep. So 7 years for this
I
year.
didn't expect that. I'm like, are you sure this is old? Are you sure this 7 year? And they're like, yep, it's 7 years single barrel. And I say, wow. So tell us more about those barrels, those
Sure.
single barrels that you guys have in your program.
Well, we identify kind of early on with the barrels. So part of Greg's sort of expertise and secret weapon is that he knows the warehouse locations in Indiana. So he knows and knew where he wanted to lay down our barrels, where he wanted to store those. And of course, since we've only been in this facility that I'm standing in for the last four, 4 years or so, and we just have been increasingly bringing more barrels over here. So we're starting to do the same thing where we identify places within the workhouse and the warehouse where we actually, we can see like, oh, the flavor, is intensifying in this barrel and it's 12 feet up, over by this window that's getting some direct sunshine. And then, this barrel that's over here that's like kind of in a dark corner, but it's drafty. It's
Yep.
also doing great. So like we're starting to be able to really map that. But, one of the things with having somebody with 35 years of experience of this is that they get to, it's a long time. It's a long time
Yep.
to be able to learn about what your barrels do. And I think there's a ton of, you can obviously like break down scientifically what happens in the barrel, but we still don't know. There's still no like substitution for time in the barrel and making sure that what went into it to start with was really great. You can't put a bad whiskey into a good barrel and expect it to be good when it comes out. The whiskey is going to still do what it's going to do with the barrel and the wood and the sugars. Um, so I think it's a combination really of just knowing like what we're putting in there is good. We've sourced our barrels from a bunch of different cooperages, but we tend to try to go with the bigger name ones that have a reputation and that we know that they're seasoning their wood before they make the oak staves, and they're doing that for at least 18 months, but preferably over 2 years. And that's just those relationships, are
Very
really
important.
to have because everybody wants in on whiskey. But we have those and had them, so it helps to make sure that we can do what we want with the whiskey. Um,
So as a whole operation now, you guys have a rye, uh,
mhm.
you know, uh, an entry whiskey, a rye, a weeded. You guys have released some special expression. I think the last 3 years I've seen a lot of special expression comes out. Tell us a little bit about what you've released that are
Sure.
special and maybe what people should be looking out for as far as
Absolutely.
special release.
Thanks, Jack. Well, we started something called a master series 2 years ago, and um, seeing where the industry is moving towards, specialty blends. You have to wait a long time. For us, we're not going to wait 2 years to release our whiskey. We're going to wait a minimum of 4 years. So anything that we've produced, in the last few years, we got to wait. And with that comes planning and figuring out how can you continue to innovate and create a new product. And so the Master Series blend was the beginning of that for us. We actually launched it with our Infinity blend, which was Greg's first Infinity release back in 2021,
What
where we
what what does that mean? What is an infinity? An
yeah, so
infinity ring?
infinity, maybe people might be familiar with the idea of like an infinity bottle,
Correct.
where essentially like you've got, just a little bit left in your your bottle and you want to save that, so you put it into a new bottle and then you continue to add to it as your, you know, last dregs of your bottle are happening. Or you want to, you know, kind of keep this kind of like archive. Like I know some people who go to the extent of literally have like a data catalog where they're like, I
Yep.
put 2 ounces of this whiskey that was this age on this date into this blend, you know, and then they just keep adding to it. So we took that idea because it's a really cool concept,
Hmm.
and made it bigger by looking at what barrels we had. So we took some really old vintage Kentucky bourbon that was 11 and 12 years at the time. And then we took some of our 6-year bourbon. We blended that together for this first release. And then because it is infinity and the concept of that is to hold back some. So we held back a certain percentage of that in 2021.
That
And then
makes
in
sense.
2022, that went into the 2022 release. Same idea, pulling the best and oldest barrels that we have in our inventory, blending that with the 2021 Infinity. And now 2023 is going to be out. It should be on shelves in another, I'd say in another month or so, maybe in a few
Okay.
weeks for some people.
You heard
Uh,
it here first.
yeah. So that's exciting. And you know, it's cool because it has a little bit of 2021 in it, has a little bit of 2022, and we're going to continue that sort of legacy project, right? And Greg is, you know, that's really Greg's baby. So he chooses how he wants the blend to taste, flavor profile, and he also decides exactly what barrels he, you know, like what mash bill he wants it to be. So it's a way for us to create, in a sense, a different mash bill also with mash. Actually, like distilling, you know, an infinity mash bill, but we're creating an infinity mash bill by taking, you know, this year it's going to be our bourbon, our wheat whiskey, and then the composites of, you know, the last 2 years. So it's a cool way of thinking about blending that allows us to experiment and get creative. And we've taken that same philosophy into the masters. So double wheat is a wheat and wheated bourbon product. And if you have you had it, Jack?
No, I have
Uh,
not.
I think that we'll have to figure out a way to make sure you taste them, because if
I
you
would love. I would love to try it.
double wheat is amazing. It's like the best of both worlds. So you've got you've got a 95% wheat whiskey basically mixed with our wheated bourbon, and the flavor profile is like liquid honey. It's so good.
Wow,
Um,
that is what I that's what I like.
yeah, it's
Uh, that I mean that shows the power of just now. You know, before I even ask the power of blending, which I want to bring up. Are you are you guys still contracting or are you distilling now?
we've done
It been festering in the back of my head, so I want to ask that first.
yeah, we've done a little bit of both. In the recent past year or so, we've decommissioned our distillery.
Okay,
The hope and dream is that we kind of outgrew that facility. So, you know, where our future lies is hopefully with something bigger and better, and with the capabilities kind of to keep up with our production.
great.
What we did invest in this year was a new blending facility. So here
Okay,
on this location with me is a very beautiful state of the art blending facility that we can, you know, manage somewhere's around, I don't know, 20,000 gallons of liquid in a day, and allows us to play around with these blends. Because part of one of the there's so many things you have to think about, but one of them is just like physical space when you're making these blends. So in our old facility, it was a Tetris. Like it would take me 6 months to put together one of these blends because I had to move the product constantly around in
right,
vessels
right.
basically. And now we have the ability to have it all in one, you know, one space and blending at the same time. So there's just a lot more capability there for that. And
So
uh,
about average capacity that you guys are sitting on barrel, what would you say? 20,000,
yeah, around 19,000. Yeah,
19,000.
yeah,
So I mean, you guys have enough barrel to survive another couple years or so.
yeah. And we'll continue to, you know, work with our custom mash bill at MGP and have them produce that for us. You know, we'll continue to really get adventurous and experiment with blending to preserve some of our inventory and some of our barrels so that we can, you know, it's going to be really cool in like a year or two when we have 10-year, you know, to,
Absolutely.
to show
But
people.
what would you say to a pessimist slash skeptical that say or you just another MGP product, right?
Mhm.
What would you say to that person that is like, oh, I don't want to pick this one up. It's just a maybe I'll go to another MGP,
Sure.
product. Is it Greg? Is it you? Is it what is the power of Old Elk, right? Obviously, Greg is a big name because he come from the source and he's now with y'all, right?
Mhm.
But for the pessimists that say, "Oh, I can get a better MGP," because there's always somebody who thinks
Sure.
there's always something different out there. Can you say, okay, we are contract distilling somewhere, not sourcing? Again, Mel did tell you all the different. Contract distilling is going to someone and say, I don't have a way to distill, but I know what I want, so I need you to make my whiskey this way, and that's how I want it. Sourcing is going and say, what do you have as barrels? I'm just gonna buy it and I'll make whatever I want. So I want you to understand the difference. There's a difference between somebody who's sourcing, which is about, if you think about 70% of brands that just came out in the last year, they're all sourcing because they don't have a choice, versus contract distilling, which is like, I mean, you gotta have some pull to go to someone and say, hey, you make whiskey? Yes, this is the recipe I want. That's how I want it. Think of it as you going to McDonald's and buying what you want, what is on the menu, and walking into the McDonald's and say, you know what I want? I want I want breakfast with lunch with something else on it, and that's how I want it to buy it. There is a huge difference there. So I want y'all to keep that in mind as you're looking at this product and sourcing versus contract distilling. I think I'm gonna give you the opportunity to kind of tell the skeptical that it haven't picked up
Sure.
a no elk bottle yet to go, hey, what sets you apart from the mass of everything?
Thanks, Jack. Yeah. So what sets us apart? I mean, I think at the heart of it, it's the people, and it's our spirit is really one that is what you see when you see like a micro craft distillery startup. That's the mentality and the attitude we have, and you get a lot of creativeness, you get a lot of passion, you get a lot of care about the product, and you get a lot of care about the customer. And you don't always see that when you're looking at other sourced big brands. I think
Hmm.
what they're looking at is how scalable, right? So it's about making as much as they possibly can. And I
Much, much
can't say that,
better.
I can't speak for other brands and what their mission statement is, but I know that's part of it, right? And for us, I mean, obviously we want to be scalable and we want to be profitable and stuff, but we care. I mean, it's why we have these really cool elk head pours. We took time to figure out
Which is the
make this.
coolest thing in the business, by the way. I need to.
Kind of
I
was
looked
different.
in my package for one of those, and I didn't find one, and I'm like,
Uh-oh.
I said they're the coolest pour
Well,
in
I
the
know where
business.
you can get more.
You cannot tell me. Can you approach it a little bit to the camera so people can see? You
Yeah.
cannot tell me that these things are not the coolest thing to pour your, if you're a hunter, if you like good whiskey, if you just, they're the coolest thing to pour your whiskey in, bar none. I said what I said. I think they're pretty cool. Yeah, they're pretty cool. I so coming back to the power of blending, it brings us to your latest and newest. I think whiskey bourbon TikTok is going crazy about this. They all are losing their mind about this cigar cut. Apparently, it's a big deal. I, even in the whiskey industry, didn't know this is a big deal. Everybody on bourbon TikTok is like, "Hey, if somebody find this cigar cut, make sure you let me know. I want to try it." Uh, this release, I believe, is your second release of the cigar cut. From what I heard on the internet, as a big deal because you use different cask,
Hmm.
and also the biggest thing is you use three different blend of your cask, and you use a first cask and a secondary aging of those casks. So yeah, everyone is talking about this cigar cut. You guys are the hot. news off the press. It is at it is at a higher proof cast strength, and I'm looking at rum barrel, Sauterne barrel, sherry barrel. So tell me all about it. What is happening with this cigar cut, and why is the whiskey internet losing their mind about this release? Tell me.
uh, well, this is a personal. I get emotional sometimes when I talk about the cigar cut because it's my first blend that I've been able to do with Old Elk.
Okay.
Um, and you asked earlier, like what also separates us. I mean, again, like the leadership and the way that we bring other people up. Greg is not afraid to. He trusts me, and he's let me experiment and create something. And that's
Right.
you don't see that a lot. Like people are very guarded over their processes and over there, they want to be and they want to be the best, and he's willing to share that. And I think it shows because people are loving the cigar cut.
A lot of people. There is a lot of talk about this Old Elk cigar
Yeah.
cut. I haven't had the first release. I don't know a lot about it, but everyone on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, everyone is talking about this Old Elk cigar cut. And I think the one thing that is the most talked about is the type of barrels that were used.
Mhm.
So I want to hear all about it.
Sure.
Get emotional. Tell us all about it. I
Okay.
I love a good story behind a bottle because he really tells me the labor and love that went behind it. So
Yeah.
for all of you guys here, if you already have a bottle of the older cigar cut, put it in the comment. I would love to know how how you feel about it. But go ahead, Mel. Tell us.
Yeah, feedback is awesome. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you think about it for sure, because there will be more releases. Yeah, the cast program started that about 3 years ago, and at the time it was like, oh, let's just experiment with a few barrels and see what happens when we take our high malt and put it into, say, a sherry barrel or a port barrel. We had some Armagnac barrels at the time, and some cognac barrels actually, and so those the kind of it was learning. There's a lot of learning with it. So, for me and for my team, it was opening up these barrels, every couple of weeks to taste them. There were some scary times. I mean, sherry barrels do a really funky
Oh,
kind
shit.
of
Sherry
thing.
barrels are the worst.
Liquid. They're great once they're finished, but during the process, it's a little scary because you get these like peaks and highs um, and lows and stuff where you're just like, what happened to the whiskey? Like, is this how it's going to taste forever? So that's part of what's kind of exciting is you're on this like emotional roller coaster the whole time with your cask. And so we work really hard. We've found some great cask purveyors that we get our cask from because that's part of it is, anybody can say on the internet that they have a good cask and then you get it here and you're like, this is not going to work.
Correct.
Because it smells bad or it's falling apart, it's been
Mhm.
treated. So it's been a ton of like learning about where to source our cask, what do people find interesting, and then thinking about how to take our liquid, and finish it in something without losing the integrity of the actual Old Elk flavor.
Correct.
And so I think we've done a great job of that, especially with the port barrels and the Armagnac barrels. Those were some of the more popular releases.
Right.
And then,
So do you guys have single releases of those barrels?
we've done a few. Yeah, I
Okay.
think some whiskey clubs have done sherry and port.
Okay.
Uh, I think Armagnac, we had like maybe one that we were able to do for people. And then we started this idea of the cigar cut started to take place while we were playing around with our cask. And so we were thinking, what else can we do to kind of make something new and fun? And so people would be like, can I have your Armagnac? And I'm like, no, you can't have the Armagnac. That's going to go into our cigar cut. And I'm glad that we kept it because it's hard to tell people no to when you're talking about, a $15,000 investment that is
Correct.
for a single barrel, right? And then if you're thinking about like what that product would be if we were to bottle it ourselves and put on a shelf, the profit there. So there's a lot of trusting your gut, and also, I mean, for me, it was reading about what different barrels do, trying to find as much resources as they could, talking to other people, listening to podcasts, and figuring out, what they were doing. But honestly, drinking a lot of competitor stuff too, to say like I
See,
want
sometimes that's the best way
this or I don't want to taste like
to know what you do better
yeah.
is to drink the competitions.
Yeah. So the cigar cut, the island blend that you have, that is a blend, like you said, of our bourbon, our wheat whiskey, and then our rye. And we finished those. And one of the cool things is we're very transparent. So we tell you what it was finished in, what type of mash bill it was, and how long we did it for. We
Mhm.
want people to know. We don't want to hide that information. We think that's part of the fun of it is being able to talk, about what you're drinking instead of being like, oh, I had to search through 20 different blogs to figure out what this mash bill is.
To find what the heck is this.
No, we want people to know what we did. I knew that the rum rye, that was kind of the place that I wanted to start with this blend. We wanted to do something that would capture a little bit different of a experience. So our first cigar cut was really rich and like bold and just kind of like a full flavored experience. And I think people liked that because it could stand up to a cigar.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing, right? When you're thinking about pairing this with something, like where we got the name from is we wanted
So,
something that,
so my expectation as I'm tasting this,
yeah,
when
you got the
somebody
islands
says
in there.
when
So
somebody says cigar cut, before even I taste it, I'm thinking of uh, oak, a lot of leather, some tobacco notes, some sweetness maybe coming on front there, but mid palate, a little oaky leather, a little bit of pepperiness at the finish. That's what I think of when somebody says cigar cut, right? That's kind of what I have in mind. I haven't tasted it. You guys are watching me the first time tasting this cigar cut. Um, Out of this whole thing, in my head right now, I actually just want to taste the second thing you put into this, which is the Old Elk Rye
right.
aged in rum cask for 8 months. Now I want to taste that
Yeah.
because the way I just tasted your rye, I'm like,
Mm,
oh, this rye will do some damage in a rum cask, right?
yeah.
Uh, I feel like in this universe of whiskey, there's some combination that are always like have been heavenly made. So when you make them, it works. Like rye in a barrel always works. Like in rye and rum always work together. You
Yeah.
can't, perfectly. Putting single malt into a sherry barrel almost work all the time. So now I'm like, oh, Old Elk rye, 95.5, put in a rum barrel,
We
8 months.
use Barbados rum barrels, and they
They
smell
they
so good when we get
Oh
them. And
yeah.
you can just they have like this dark, kind of like yeasty fruit smell
Mhm.
to them. It's like you can almost taste the esters. And then putting the rye in there, it like softens kind of the hard edges that you have with a rye spice flavor,
Correct.
and so it really smooths it out. And you kind of it can almost walk the line a little bit of like fooling people. I think on the sensory, like with the nose,
Mhm.
we've had people be like, I think this is rum. And then they taste it and they're like, oh no, it's rye finished
Mhm.
in the rum. I can get that. Um, yeah,
I,
it's,
I vote on next release to be Old Elk Rye finish in rum barrel.
and
That's
rum.
that's my
Well,
vote.
we have some, so I'll see if we can get you a sample to try because
Definitely my vote.
yeah, I mean, again though, it's hard. It's tough. People don't all love rye, so getting them to try something new, I think, is one way to kind of backdoor the interest in that.
Love
Um,
the nose on this.
yeah, so you're probably picking up on. Well, I'm not going to tell you what you're going to pick up on, but
No.
you can tell us, Jack, because you're the
I'm the hood sommelier, right? I can. So right now, I need to clear my. Like I said, that smell of fresh leather, fresh. I call it the grandpa bag, work bag.
I love
Beautiful.
leather as a
Yeah,
flavor
just fresh
identifier.
fresh leather. Those old attache that people hold to go to work. That there's that smell of fresh leather in there. A little bit of that lavender is also coming through, so we get a little bit of that sweetness, a little bit of that, yeah, a little bit of that spice is coming through as well. Some anise, a little bit of. Yeah, anise and clove is the spice that I'm getting through that is coming in. But the sweetness, I can place it. The sweetness remind me of a darker sweet, more of like a caramel, something, burnt sugar or
That might be the Sauterne barrel. So
right.
we finished our wheat whiskey in Sauterne barrels for 6 months, and the flavors that we pulled out of there were like honey and pear. Kind of reminded me, like you're talking about it, like the sense memory of like a leather satchel.
Yeah,
I taste and smell things. That's what I'm trying to link it to, is a memory, right? Like
yeah,
where do I feel like I am with this, or how did it taste, or
yeah.
what are
The sweetness definitely is coming through with that. If you think about that raw honey, not the filter, but raw, like still have that honeycomb in there, is yeah, that raw honey. I mean, I love the color on this. And
it's good.
the oldest whiskey in this is 6 years.
Yep. So 6 years. Pretty much we did,
All of them are 6 years old.
yeah, 6 year rye finished in the rum barrels for 8 months. And then we did 6 year bourbon finished in sherry barrels for 2 years, port barrels for an average of 6 to 10 months. Um, and then our wheat whiskey, we finished, that was 6 year wheat whiskey that we finished in the Sauterne barrels for 6 months. So you get a ton of like
There
layer.
there is a lot of layer happening here. That's the best way to describe it. Like the nose is interesting enough for me to just sit around. Like if I was getting ready to drink this and just write about it, I w- I already think the nose is a dissertation. Is a conversation piece
That's cool.
because and right now, you know what? Cheers. Let's try it because if I sit here on the nose, I'll sit here forever. Mm, wait a minute. That mouth feel. The mouth feel start making you kiss the air. It's just a beautiful, beautiful mouth feel. It coats your mouth completely around. Nice sweetness, not too sweet at all. Just beautiful and exactly my expectation. Those peppery note in the back. Midway, you get a little bit of that oak, perfectly balanced. Those Sauterne barrel did really well. That rum barrel give you those little bit of those banana note almost on the top of that sweetness, but more of a banana foster, not banana, you know, a raw banana, but banana foster sweetness. As like if I took banana flambe with some honey,
Yum.
added a little bit of oak on top of it, a little bit of some cherries on top, and um finished it with some clove. That is what this will be. This will be the profile of it.
I
it
love that pairing.
it's it's and the funny thing is the longer you sit with it, it's a little delicate. I love the delicacy. Is I hate to say it feel like a woman's touch, but it feels like a woman's touch.
That's
There's a
okay.
little bit of that delicate touch to it that you
Yeah.
almost can't get away from. It
Balance is really important.
correct. It is for me. For me, the name tells you that it is balance, but balance more in the sense of those variants of notes. I like the pepperiness. I want that oak. I want that leather. And obviously it coats your mouth like rough inside of a leather,
Nice.
leather holder, those roughness that you get there. That the whiskey just coats all over.
Did you hang out with this whiskey on an island, lounging in a chair, smoking a cigar? Because that's I hope you will, because that's what I want to do with it. Hence its name. We decided to kind of,
Because right now,
tell people how they should drink it a little bit.
I will tell you, there's this cigar made by Deadwood called Fat Bottom Betty.
I like the name.
I love Fat Bottom Betty. Is one of they make Fat Bottom Betty and they make Sweet Jane. But the difference between Sweet Jane and Fat Bottom Betty is Sweet Jane have a sweeter wrapper. A Fat Bottom Betty have more of a dry wrapper. And with the sweetness that come through with the Sauterne barrel and the rum barrel, I will have a Fat Bottom Berry from Deadwood, and this will be like the perfect pairing for me. A
Nice.
dried peppery with a little bit of sweet edge of a cigar, and just this beauty. Like I feel like it will be marriage made in heaven. But honestly, I can see where the hype come from.
It's
This
cool.
is this is good whiskey. This no, like I hate I
Yeah.
hate when people blend stuff in multiple things because I feel like you're trying to confuse you kind of confuse me as a consumer. Like, look here, but we're doing something else here.
Sure.
But this
Yeah.
right
No,
here
I think people
is
definitely had a judgment, prejudgment, of what
it's
everything was in here.
it's the fact that is also transparent, but also I hate to say it, this is gonna be in the contender for whiskey of the year this year because the hardest thing for me is finding somebody who can blend perfectly. I don't see a lot of people blend perfectly. For me, and this is 100% me, it meets all my requirement of what I want my blended whiskey to be. It is over 50 proof, so I get that what I want there from somebody, an expert, quote unquote, you know, uh, dry wood lover. It has four different barrels. Amazing. And add salt to injury, it has just depth, and I love that. Finish with some balance. You know what, Mel? Prepare yourself because this is gonna be the whiskey people are gonna fight about at the grocery store. But
Thank
I truly believe I have to sit down and re-review it. I'm gonna review it specifically because I truly believe this is a work of art. So I understand where the emotion come from. I understand what you put into this, and I can see why you feel a certain way about it. But if you haven't heard it yet, I'm proud of you.
thank you, Jack.
This is solid. This is amazing. This is good. This is solid. So
Oh, you're making me blush. You're making a girl
yeah,
blush.
if this was your baby, this baby is beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like her too.
it's well done. It's well done. This is this is good because people saw my first time reaction to this whiskey. I love it. I will ask two more questions and I will let you go. First question will be: beside this baby that is obviously beautiful, what other baby are you working on?
Well, so Greg's Infinity 2023, I've been lucky myself and my team have been working to blend that up for him, and it's great. I think people are gonna, every year is a different expression, and
Right.
it is cool because this one's very different from last year, but it's a beautiful blend of whiskeys. Cigar Cut 3, I guess you could call it, will be out in the spring.
Oh,
Um,
we are
so
hitting it immediately next year.
yeah, so our dream is to have 2 releases a year, and
Okay.
so it's kind of seasonal. We won't call it a spring blend and we won't call it a winter blend, but the idea being that it's very much a reflection of the where you're drinking it and the when you're drinking it.
Okay. Okay. So last but not least, what is the one thing you want people to if there's one thing you want people to know about Old Elk we didn't talk about in the interview? What is the one thing you want them to? Let me bring your attention to this. You may want to know this as you are following us, as you're picking up a bottle of ours, as you hear about us. This is the one thing I want you to keep in mind.
I want people to know that there's something within our expressions for everybody. So we've got single barrel releases that are just amazing cask finished, cask proof products. We've got more experimental stuff like the blends, like our master series and the cigar blend that are just amazing as well for those who are collecting and want to try something new and want a whiskey that takes them to a place. And then I think, our core products are really a wonderful way for people to just feel good about the whiskey that's on their back shelf and also bring their friends along for the ride. One of the things that's so great about the whiskey world in general is how social it is, right? Like you and I are sitting here talking about whiskey. Like at the end of the day, like it's just whiskey, but also
Right.
it's what it brings together. And people watching this and people who are into the world of whiskey, that's why, right? Because they enjoy the company that they have with each other. They enjoy the ability to take it like seriously in the sense of like there's knowledge and education that you can share with each other. You
Absolutely.
can do food pairings. Like I think it's so cool for you.
Absolutely. For all of you guys watching, I want to remind you that knowing the whiskey or just the bottle is fine, but knowing the people behind the whiskey and the bottle. I had no idea Mel had something to do with this. I had no idea, and now knowing this, I uh, I'm very excited. I cannot wait to see what you come up with. You made a fan out of me.
Oh,
Your
good.
style of blending is quite particular. It's quite different. I, I yeah. I think I'm gonna make it a mission to remind people that Mel Maddox is out here doing something crazy
Thanks.
on the market, and she wants you to actually go on a journey with her. Your whiskey tells a story, and Greg obviously set you up pretty well with
I
some
think
amazing whiskey. So finishing it and blending is a big deal now, but I don't think everybody's doing it the right way. And Mel, especially with you not having done being a master blender, right? Per se, and just going off what you think can be an amazing whiskey is something to commend and something to truly appreciate about you. So this cigar blend here, obviously pick up what you want. But if there's one thing you can do for yourself in 2023, we all special I'm gonna talk to the expert that love expert, right? Because those people that are willing to spend, I believe, over $100 on a bottle. If you have not picked this bottle yet, the hype is true. This, like we say in the hood, is some good shit
I
right
love
here.
it.
You want some good shit right here. So I'm gonna remind every single one of you is old elk oldelk.com. That's I believe if I get
Old Elk, yeah, Old Elk bourbon.com
yeah,
for
it's
Instagram and then for Old Elk Distillery for our website.
Old Egg Bourbon on Instagram. That's what I have at Old Egg Bourbon on Instagram. But I want you to actually do me a favor, and if you don't follow, they're doing a pretty good job at least keeping you informed. You can't just bother, you know, uh, Miss Maddox every time you feel like
Yeah,
you need to do something.
totally.
So don't bother her.
No,
Don't
you
bother
can. Yeah, that's what
her.
we're very
Just make
connected
sure
people.
that you actually go on a website, go follow them on social media. They do an amazing job of making sure that they're keeping you informed on what's happening with their release. But I will tell you right now, oldelk.com is the website. Old Elk Bourbon on Instagram. I'll follow them. Go follow them. Go follow
Thanks,
them. Make sure that you actually know what's happening. A lot of great things come out of Colorado.
Jack.
But I never thought in my head somebody can convince me to buy MGP without convincing me to buy MGP, and that's what's happening. And I love the transparency that you guys have going on. I love what you're doing. Cigar Cut Edition 3 coming what, spring 2020, twenty
Oh,
twenty four.
May or June. Yeah.
Yeah, spring 2024. So, but go bother your store owners. For all of you guys that follow me from Nebraska here, this I'm assuming will be allocated.
I mean, we tried to make a little bit more this time because
It
we only
ish
had like 3,000
allocated
cases
ish.
the first time.
So
uh,
it is already in the market. So
yeah.
I would tell you right now, start checking your stores, start checking your local stores, and start asking when are you getting your Old Elk cigar cut, because it is worth the price and it is worth the chase.
Yeah.
Uh,
The voice of the customer is very strong, very
yes,
important.
Mel, the last word is yours before we close.
Well, thank you, Jack. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you on a Monday afternoon. It feels like the week is already turned around.
Mondays sucks. So anything we can do to make it better, that's
Yeah,
what we'll be doing.
this is better.
Yes.
Um, and I'm sure people know what you've been doing in the past, but I just want to say, like, I heard about you from Bourbon Women down in Kentucky at the conference because you're putting on an awesome seminar there about whiskey and food pairings. And I just hope like your flavor profiles are on point. So I hope we get a chance to work with you some more on that.
I'm telling you, Mel. Like I know what this will pair with, but when I think about your weeded already, there's a few things that I can think of, and your rye specifically, because it's not that strong and that I I'm telling, like, now I wanna go to the next. We have a thing happening in Nebraska here that's called the Stickman Reunion, which is people that love cigar but also love whiskey. And I want to take this bottle and just pour it blind. And I just want people to guess the age, you know, guess the blend and that. And I can guarantee you, no one can actually guess all the things you put in. I'm so excited about it because because this is gonna be the bourbon we're gonna talk about, and I'm gonna annoy people about, like, I don't like rye and I don't like Finnish whiskey and blah blah. Blah. I'm like,
Mhm.
just try this. I'm so excited. You did amazing. I love when my palate is confused, and you confused the hell out of me, and I love it
Good.
in a good
Thanks.
way.
No, I mean, it's a little mad scientist action that happened in there, but I think it worked out in the end. So,
Uh,
yeah.
so to complete it, even if the people follow you, people know what you're doing, people buy your product. I'm assuming people can also visit y'all.
Yeah. So, we are here in Fort Collins. We have a taste room. Um, Typically, we don't do public tours of our space,
Okay.
but, there's ways to get that. So it's always reach out. Like if you're visiting Fort Collins, reach out to us through our social media channels or on our website. Um, because we are such a small company, we really do try to accommodate our fans and find a way
Thinking
to.
about your next barrel pick.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, barrel picks. These behind me, we had a barrel pick today, so we'll
Thinking
typically
about your next barrel pick.
8 or 10 barrels, even more sometimes. You tell us. Yeah,
You
we'd love to
know.
share what we got going on.
So do you allow people when they're doing barrel pick to choose to blend?
We've had a few. I don't know how much I'm allowed to really like disclose at this time, but we did do a private blend recently of two different mash bills,
Okay.
and I think if you follow like Coming Whiskey,
Yeah.
you'll have seen a couple months ago that there was a release of something by Old Elk that was not our Old Elk standard. So that was a private blend that we did. We really have had not a whole lot of I guess it's just tough. We want to say yes to everything, but you can't always.
Correct.
So it has to be, and there's a lot of legalities around that kind of stuff. But
It has to make sense.
yeah, it has to make sense. We've done a lot of mini blends of the same type, like where somebody will buy 10 bourbon barrels and blend those all together to make their own blend. And that's really cool because they're hand selecting. We're choosing with them like which barrel they're going to have and helping them identify the footprint, kind of like the fingerprint for that whiskey. So that's pretty cool. That's something we can definitely do. It's just when we get into like the sort of, like people will be like, I want to do a cigar cup one. It's like, no, sorry,
Can do that.
for us.
Can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
We're,
thank
we're,
you.
we
Thank
got
you
the
so
girls.
much
We
for
love to
coming
share them.
on. Thank you so much for coming on. Oldelk.com. Make sure you actually follow what they're doing. Old Hell have been in the business. You guys are all over the US. I think distribution wise,
All 50 states.
you're almost in all 50 states. So I want to make sure that you guys I would say I would dare you, I would challenge you, pick up a bear. Just pick up a bottle. Tell me what you think. I would love to hear it. If you're watching the recast of this, or you just Googled Old Elk and just happened to fall on this video, we appreciate you staying here and listening and knowing more about it. Ben is here to answer any of your question. And Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you being here.
My
And
pleasure.
we'll love to have you back again, maybe with Greg, and talk about the next release of the cigar cut because now you made me a fan of the cigar cut. Now I have to actually pair this with a cigar
Yes.
because about 3 weeks, yeah, 3 weeks ago I paired a single barrel with a cigar, and that was actually kind of interesting as far as the flavor note. But
Mhm.
now the cigar cut with a cigar, I can't wait to make that video and show you what's happening. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you taking your time. Can't wait to have you back again. Remember, this is your house now, so if you have anything to talk about, feel free to actually come back, and we'll love to host you. For all of you guys watching, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.